Today, I'm going over 10 things you can do with Microsoft's Copilot in Excel. But before I get started, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss more of these types of videos in the future. One of the things that Copilot does really well in Excel is create visuals for you. So if you need a simple chart added to your spreadsheet, it can quickly do that for you. So as long as you've selected your data and it's clear where you want to pull your data from, then what you can do is set up a simple prompt in Copilot. So I've selected my data, and if I go into Copilot here, I'm going to enter a prompt to say, create a chart showing total sales by month. And it's reading my request, and it's automatically detecting my data range, as you can see, A1 to H1000. So it detects the data. Just like if you were to create a chart manually in Excel, it's automatically detecting that. So the key thing is making sure you've selected your table or made it clear what your data set is. And so here I see a preview. I see the amounts. I see the date field. So it's set up that axis properly. And if I like it, I can click the button to add to a new sheet. And so now it's inserting that content. So it's created sheet 2 and it's loading that into there. So now it's created a pivot table, and we've also got a line chart right next to it. And so we've got our sales, and so it creates a chart showing our sales. So exactly what I wanted it to do. So let's try an example where we actually give it more direction. So let's try this again and say, create a column chart showing sales by month. So in the previous prompt, I did not specify the type of chart I wanted. It automatically just created a line chart for me. In this example, I specified a column chart, and now it's created a column chart for me. So it tells me a cluster column chart showing total sales by year and month has been created. And so again, if I like it, add a new sheet, and it's going to create sheet 3 and post that pivot table again with that chart in there. So really easy to do that there. So now let's go back to sheet 1. Let's try another prompt here. This time let's ask it to create a pie chart showing sales by product. So same type of request. This time we're focusing on a different field and a different type of pie chart. And because it's automatically able to detect it, it's created that for me. So as you can see, I've got a preview of it. And it actually gives me a little bit of extra analysis here, saying a pie chart showing total sales by product has been created. Product C has the highest sales at 108,650, followed by product E and others. So it gives me a little bit of analysis in there, and it has the chart I want as well. So I can click add to a new sheet, and again, it's going to create yet another new sheet, another pivot table, and a chart with this. Now, the one limitation of this, however, is if I select the chart and say, okay, go back to Copilot and say, add labels to this pie chart. If I ask it to modify the pie chart, that's where we run into a limitation, at least right now, because it's looking for a table or a data range. So if it doesn't detect that, it's not able to make changes, even though we've got the chart selected. Even if I say, okay, let's say in chart 1, so that's the name of the chart, we've got it selected, I say add a header called sales by product. Even if I have it selected and I specify the name, it's not going to be able to do that for me. It's going to give me this response again that it's saying it can't find a table or data range to answer my questions. So one of the things that you'll have to do is, if you want to change a chart that is already created, you're going to have to go in and manually modify. Perhaps in a future version, it'll have the capability to do so, but for now, it's strictly looking for a table or data range to make any charts. But as far as doing any manipulation of the charts, that's something that's not yet a function of the Copilot. So let's go back in sheet 1 and try a more complex example. So I'm going to say, create a chart showing cumulative sales as a line chart and monthly sales as a column chart, all in one visual. So this is a more complex chart because I'm asking it to basically create a combo chart where we see cumulative sales as a line chart and then monthly sales as a column chart. And so this is a bit more complex because it would have to do that, and it tells me that it can't create a combined visual of both cumulative sales as a line chart and monthly sales as a column chart in one. Please try a different type of chart or separate the data into two visuals. So that's, again, one of the limitations of Copilot is it can create simple charts for you, but if you're looking at more advanced ones, like a combination, obviously that you're going to be not able to do that with Copilot as of now and in the preview mode. So as long as you understand the limitations, it can be useful in creating simple charts for you. But beyond that, at least in the preview mode, it's not yet able to do anything more complex than that. Copilot in Excel can't help you modify your charts or make changes to them, but it can help you understand how to make those changes. So if I open up Copilot here, so I'm going to select my chart, and I'm going to ask it to change my chart into a column chart. So I'm going to say, okay, how can I change my chart from a line chart into a column chart? And so if I ask it for directions on how to make changes, it can guide me as to how to do that. So it's going to read my prompt here and should hopefully give me some instructions on what I need to do to make the changes that I want to do. So here you can see it's giving me a list of directions. So click on the chart to select it. You should see the chart tools added to the ribbon with the design and format tabs, which we do. And then says go to the design tab under the chart tools and then click on change chart type. So we've got that in there. And then in the change chart type dialog box, select column. From the list of charts, choose the specific style of column you want. In this case, we just want a cluster one. And then I can't select this dialog, but so it does give us instructions on how to make changes that we want to. Let's say, okay, how do I change the color of my column chart? So again, it can't make changes to my chart, but it can instruct me on where to go to do that. So it is helpful in guiding you along, especially if you're trying to do more complex things that you're not sure how to do in Excel. So here we've got, again, the same sort of instructions. We've got numbers saying, okay, select the chart, click on the column chart that you want to change the color of, select that column, and then right click to select the columns and choose format data point, format data series. And so there it guides me in there. So if I need to go back there, I can see those prompts in there in that Copilot field. And it says, and then in the format data point or format data series pane that appears, click on the fill and line icons. That looks like a paint bucket. So it gives me pretty good directions there. So it looks like a paint bucket, correct? And then we've got the fill option in there and says click on fill and then select solid fill, choose the color or palette that you want. So as you can see, it does a fairly good job of instructing us on how to make these changes in Excel, even though we may not have the ability to have Copilot do it for us. It can guide us in the right direction. So if you want to look for how to make changes, if we're looking for a certain function, that's one of the things that it can really help with and give you a step-by-step outline of where you need to go, what to click on, and even gives you a really useful description of what to look like. In this example, it told us it looked like a paint bucket. So if you're new to Excel, if you're not sure where to find something, Copilot can be really helpful in directing you to the right place to find it and make the changes that you need. And perhaps in future versions, you'll be able to make these changes, but for now in the preview mode, it can help with doing that. Copilot in Excel can help you create formulas and add additional columns to your data set. Here we've got sales broken down by product, by salesperson, and let's say I want to add an amount for taxes. So I've got our quantity, price, total sales, but I don't want to have taxes and the total amount after taxes. So what I can do is open up Copilot, and what I'm going to do is ask it to create an additional column to calculate taxes payable. Assume an 8% tax rate. And by doing this, what Copilot's going to do is it's going to determine what formula to use. And then once it's done, it's going to give me that formula and allow me to insert it right into my table. So here we see that it's taking the total sales times by 0.08. So it's taken that 8% tax rate that I gave it as an input, and it's going to multiply it by that total sales column. So it knows that it's going to multiply by total sales. And so this is what it looks like. It gives me an excerpt of what that column is going to be. And so now I can click on this button to insert the column. And now it's added my taxes payable. So really an easy way to add that. So $250 times 8% gives us $20 taxes payables. Now let's add another column. Create another column called total billed, which includes taxes and total sales. So now I want to combine them together to get a total amount that's actually billed out to the customer. And so now it's going to do the same thing. Now it's automatically adjusted my range. Now before I was looking at A to H, columns A through H. Now it's looking through A through I. So it automatically, just like an Excel file normally would, it's automatically going to adjust to your range. And so now it's grabbing that total sales and that taxes payable column. So it knows exactly how to reference these in a way to do the calculation. And here it gives me a preview to make sure that that looks correct. So row 2, it tells me it's 270. So I can see that it's taking 250 plus the $20, adding it to make 270. Row 3 is 405, so 375 plus 30. So that looks correct. So now what I'm going to do is say, okay, let's insert this column. Click on that. And now I've got my total amount billed. So as you can see, it's really easy to make these changes with Copilot. So even if you're not sure what formula to use, this can be a really effective way to add it. For example, let's say we want the month value for this. So we want to be able to filter out by month. Like right now, we've got our dates. We've got day, month, and year, all in one field. Let's say create a column to get the month name from column A. So I'm specifying that I want to get the actual month name. I don't want to just get the month number or anything like that. I want the month name from column A. So I'm making it specific to say this is what I want to pull out. So again, it's generating, going through my data, and now as you can see, it's updated to the range A1 to J1000. So it's automatically updating based on my data. And so now it's telling us it's looking at A1 to J1000. Here's one formula column to review and insert in column K called month name. It displays the full name of the month for each transaction date, making it easier to identify and analyze sales trends by month. So simple formula here. And if we want an explanation, we can click down this and say, extracts the month name from the date column for each row in the table by using the following steps. Use the text function to format the value in the date column as the full month name. So I'm going to insert the column and done. Really easy. So even if you didn't know how to do this yourself, or if you had problems with creating the right formula, with Copilot, you can ask it for help to do this. So for example, let's say we make a mistake here. And let's say we have total sales divided by 0. We get our div 0 error. So I can ask that, okay, why am I getting an error with this? in the total build field. So it's going to go through and look at this and analyze my data set to see what is the issue. So let's see how Copilot fixes this. So I've given it both the field range and I've given it the formula that's in there. So let's see what it's telling us. So it's telling us I'm getting the error because the formula is attempting to divide the value by 0. Division by 0 is undefined, and so it gives me that div 0 error. To avoid this, you should avoid dividing by 0 by using a different divisor. Here's an example of how you'd modify the formula. So it suggests adding an if statement to say, okay, if 0 is equal to 0, then we get an error message saying cannot divide by 0. Otherwise, we get our total sales divided by that. So it says replace some non-zero value with the actual value or cell reference you intend to use as a divisor. So by putting in our formula and telling us we're getting an error, it can analyze this and tell us why there's a problem with our formula. So I'm going to do Control Z to undo that and get our calculations back. But as you can see, with Copilot in Excel, it's really easy to determine what the right formula should be to use, and it's also possible for it to help you review your formulas, to spot any sort of errors and understand why you're getting those errors. So it can definitely be a really useful assistant in that sense to help you identify what the root cause of your error is and how to fix it. Using shortcuts in Excel can help save you a lot of time. And odds are, even if you're an advanced user, you probably don't know of every possible shortcut that you can use or that might be helpful to you. And rather than looking online, what you can do is access Copilot and ask it for specific shortcuts or ideas for shortcuts that you may want to use. So if I open up Copilot, I'm going to put in a request for, I'm going to start with just something really generic for, let's say you're a new user. You just want to get an idea of some of the shortcuts you may want to use. I can say, okay, what are some common shortcuts? So I'm not giving it any sort of direction. You could ask it for specific shortcuts related to, let's say, date and time, pivot tables, and whatever else you're working on to get more focused shortcuts. But in this first prompt, I'm just going to ask it for just a generic range of shortcuts aimed at, ideally new users who may not be familiar with them. So we've got a lot of the common ones: Control N to create a new workbook, Control O to open, S to save, P to print, Control C and Control V are really common ones for copying and pasting, Control X to cut, Control Z to undo, Control Y to redo. So this gives you a good list of shortcuts to try out if you're specifically if you're a new user. But let's say you're an advanced user and you may be looking for something outside of this. We can say, okay, what are some less commonly known shortcuts? So in this example, I'm challenging Copilot to give me something new beyond just the regular Control C, Control V, that sort of stuff. I want to find shortcuts that I may not have considered or am familiar with. And over the years, Excel's evolved. There's been a lot more functionality. So let's see what it comes back with. So it's giving me 15 different shortcuts that I can potentially use here. So Alt ESV, for example, is going to give me the paste special dialog. If I do Control semicolon, it's going to insert the current date. Control Shift semicolon is going to insert the current time. Alt and Enter is going to start a new line in the same cell. So for example, if I type in Alt and Enter here and open up this formula bar, you can see that my cursor is now in the line below. So I can type in something else, date, time, right? So if I wanted to, I can fit more data into one of these cells. So that's a good shortcut to know. Control 0 to hide the selected column. So I've got column A selected here. If I do Control 0, it's going to hide that one for me. Control Z is going to undo. I go back into there. So a lot of different shortcuts that you can experiment with and learn about. So Control Shift U, for example, is going to expand or collapse the formula bar. So if I'm in the formula bar, Control Shift U, collapse and expand. So a lot of different ideas that you can potentially get here from different shortcuts you may benefit from. And so Copilot makes it really easy because rather than going to look online, you can enter a prompt here. You can say, give us another 10 shortcuts we may possibly want to use, or it lists some shortcuts related to pivot tables, to formatting, whatever the case may be. It gives us a lot of different ideas and ways that we can learn about different shortcuts that we may not have known about. So a really underrated feature of Copilot is you can learn a lot more about Excel, even if you think you know all there is to know about it, or if you're an advanced user. There's still a lot of things that can help give you ideas about different shortcuts, different functionalities, and things that you can do. And this example, shortcuts, is just one aspect of that. So I'd encourage you, if you have access to Copilot, try to ask it for shortcuts related to specific tasks that you're working on, and that might give you ideas as to some of the ways that it can help you in your day-to-day tasks that you may not have known about. Sorting data in Excel isn't terribly difficult. All it requires is really, once you've got filters applied, selecting them and selecting to sort A to Z, Z to A, whatever the case may be. But Copilot can help you with that, and that can be useful if you're trying to apply multiple sorting rules. So I'm going to open up Copilot and show you how we can apply a simple sort. I'm going to sort by salesperson. So I'm going to say, okay, sort the salesperson field in ascending order. And now what it's going to do is apply that sort for me. A really simple request. I could have done it myself easily, but Copilot can do that for me, and it's going to confirm the changes that it's going to apply. So I'm going to hit apply. It's going to do it to the salesperson column, and you'll see that it's as if I did it myself manually. If I click on this, you can see it's done a sort A to Z. Now let's do a more complicated sort. I'm going to apply multiple sorting rules. I'm going to say sort my data first by sales from largest to smallest, then sort by product in ascending order, then sort by salesperson in ascending order. So here I've asked it for 3 separate things I want it to do. And so by just typing it in, this can make it a whole lot easier. If you're not sure whether you want to specify ascending, descending order, you can say largest to smallest, whatever the case may be. So it's going to tell me it's going to apply these 3 different rules on here. I'm going to hit apply. And now let's take a look if it's done that correctly. So as you can see, it's doing step by step in here. So we see that I know it's a bit confusing taking a look at this. It's talking about index 6, index 3, index 2. But if we look at this, it's sorted it correctly. We've got sales going from largest to smallest. And then within that, we've got the product sorted and the rep. So first we see rep A's, product A sales, product B sales, product C sales. And they're all sorted from largest to smallest. So first it's looking at rep A, they're different products, and their sales from largest to smallest. So it's done the job for us as far as applying those sorting rules correctly, and so we can easily view our data the way we want to. So Copilot can help you with that, especially when you've got multiple rules and you want to do that quickly and easy just by entering a prompt and you're not sure how you want to communicate it, worrying about whether you specify ascending or descending. You can put it in a way where it makes sense to you, and then Copilot can take that input and apply it to your data set. If you need to apply filters to your table, that's something that Excel's Copilot can help you with, even if you've got complicated filters or multiple filters you want to apply. So I'm going to show you how you can do this. So as long as you've got your data set selected somewhere, click on Copilot, and what we're going to do is give it some instructions. So in this case, I'm going to say filter this table to only show products A and E. So this way I'm specifying multiple criteria for it. And so what it's going to do is it's going to filter based on the criteria I specified. So I didn't have to specify column D. It knows which column to look at. So it's going to tell me that it's going to apply a filter on the column product of table 1. And so I'm going to click on apply. So it's going to confirm that's what I want. And now it's going to apply those changes onto here. So obviously this is a bit of a simplistic task to do, and it, if you were to do it, it'd take you a couple seconds probably to do that. But with Copilot, you can apply more advanced filters or multiple conditions at once, and that can be helpful if you don't want to go through doing this one by one. So for example, we can say, okay, also filter by rep A and rep G. So I just want to have just those two sales reps filtered. So rep A and rep G. And so it's going to apply that filter in addition to the filter we've already got here. So I'm going to hit apply. And so it's done those. So now I've got product A, product E, and I've got rep A and rep G. So I've applied those filters. Now let's do a more complicated filter. And in this case, I'm going to filter by the sales column. So first I'm going to say remove the existing filters, then filter sales so that it shows sales values between $200 and $300. So by doing this, we're applying a more specific criteria. So we're not just selecting items, we're selecting a specific range of values, and at the same time asking Copilot to remove the filters we already have in place. And so here it tells us the steps it's going to take. Remove the filters and then apply a filter to total sales so that it only shows values between 200 and 300. I'm going to hit apply. And so it's going to take those steps. And we can see the filters are gone for these ones. We only see the filters for the total sales. And so we can see what it's done by clicking this. And under number filters, we can see it's selected between and specified between greater than or equal to 200 and less than or equal to 300. So it's applied our filter. So obviously we could have done this manually, but if you're not used to setting up filters, especially when you've got ranges of values, you want to look greater than or less than or between, then Excel's Copilot can help you with that. And then you can also review and see how it's applied those filters. And the cool thing about it is, you can walk it through step by step, first filtering one item, then filtering another, or you can specify multiple things at once. Like in this previous instruction, it's done 2 steps for us at once. So we don't have to do one by one, but we can do that if we want to. So if you're just doing a tedious filtering or you're selecting a sales rep, obviously you might not get a whole lot of use out of Copilot in this case. But if you want to apply multiple criteria, such as filtering by multiple fields, specifying a range, then Copilot can make that process a whole lot easier to set that up for you, and then you can review it. And then if you like it, use the apply button to make those changes to your data set. Creating pivot tables in Excel is a great way to quickly analyze and summarize your data. And with the help of Copilot, it can set that up for you in a matter of seconds. If I click on the Copilot button, what I'm going to do is ask it to create a pivot table for me. I'm going to start with a simple example where I just wanted to summarize my sales. So I'm going to say create a pivot table summarizing sales by product and sales rep. And so what it's going to do is show me a preview of what that's going to look like, and if I do like it, I can add it as a new sheet. You'll notice I mentioned sales rep even though my field is called salesperson. So Copilot's able to figure out what I'm talking about here, so you don't have to worry about if you don't get the name exactly right or the exact spelling of the name. So I'm going to click add to a new sheet, and what it's going to do is create that sheet and load that pivot table in there. And so what's really convenient about this is it's added that, and it's also set up my field. So it's put salesperson in rows, product in columns, and the total sales in the values section. So it's set that up for me. So it goes a bit further than just actually creating a pivot table, and then you still have to set it up and put the right columns, the right fields in the right places. So that's a nice feature where it does that step for me as well. Let's create a bit more of a complex request and say, okay, let's create a pivot table summarizing sales by sales rep and date, and group the date field by month. And so the idea being, I wanted to show a breakdown of what my sales are by individual month. I don't want to see every single date on there. And so here we've got the year, we've got months, And so now let's add that to a new sheet. Let's see what that looks like if it was able to set that up properly. So it has. So we've got years, we've got months, and we've got sales rep, and we've got sales. Now the one thing, one caveat about this is sometimes I've gotten mixed results with this where I put in the instructions, but it can't figure out exactly the right way to set that up. So if you come across that, just try and rephrase it, adjust your prompt maybe to specify it in a different way, or try it again, just rewording it a little bit. But for the most part, it should be able to set that up, like in this example, grouping your dates by month and putting it into a format like this where, you know, it's setting up your pivot table in a way where it's easy to read. It's got the fields set up correctly. Right now, there's not a whole lot of advanced things that it can do with pivot tables, but for the basic functionality and setting it up like this, this is something that Copilot can help you do. So if you're looking for advanced features, I wouldn't expect that from Copilot just yet, but if you just need the basics in being able to create a pivot table, it can definitely help you do that right now. Conditional formatting rules can help you visualize your data set, identify patterns, trends, and potential problems in your data set. And if you're not sure how to set those up, you can use Copilot to help you. So I'm going to show you how we can do that. So I'm going to open up Copilot, and I'm going to create a conditional formatting criteria based on my sales column. So I'm going to say, create the following conditional formatting rules for column G. I'm going to do Shift Enter just to organize my criteria a bit better, but this isn't necessary for setting this up in Copilot. So I'm going to say highlight cells red and use a white font color if the value is less than 100. And then I'm going to say highlight cells green and use a black font color if the value is greater than 500. So I'm setting up multiple rules here. And so what Copilot's going to do is first show me what that logic looks like and what the formatting looks like before actually going ahead and applying it. So if I'm happy with what it looks like, I can hit the apply button. So this is what it looks like if the cell value is less than 100. It's going to apply this formatting. If the value is greater than 500, this is what it's going to do. So in this case, I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit the apply button. And now it's going to go ahead and set that up. So the first thing it's going to do is set up that red formatting. So we've got the values less than 100. And now it's going to set up the ones over 500 with that green formatting. So easy enough. Now let's also create another conditional formatting rule. This time I'm going to use a color scale. So I'm going to say create a conditional formatting color scale based on the price column. So in this case, we're looking at the price column and saying now I want to easily see the highs, lows, and median values. And I haven't specified any sort of color. So Copilot's just going to use the default setup, and that's going to give me the red, white, and green colors. So I'm going to hit apply again, and it's going to set that up for the price column. And so now I can see the low values, the high values. Actually, these are the intermediate values. These are the low values in red. So it applies that default gradient if you were to use the color scale. I'm also going to ask it to use data bars, which is another type of conditional formatting. So I'm going to say create conditional formatting data bars for the quantity column. So in this example, let's also highlight the quantity. So this time I can see data bars showing low, moderate, and high values. And again, it uses the default green gradient there. I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to set that up as well. And so now once this is done, we have now our quantity having one type of conditional formatting, our price having another, and our total sales having yet another. Now, the one limitation that I've encountered so far is trying to create conditional formatting to apply for the entire row if a certain value is met. So that's the one thing that right now Copilot isn't able to set up properly without coming across issues. But if you're setting up conditional formatting for individual columns, then it can definitely help you set that up. It can also remove any conditional formatting for you as well. So I can say remove all conditional formatting rules from this sheet. And it's going to do that for me. And that's not a terribly difficult thing to do. You just go to conditional formatting and clear all the rules. But that's another thing that you can do right from within Copilot. And it's going to tell you the one change that it's going to do: clear all conditional formatting rules on A2 to K1000, which is my data set. And I'm going to hit apply. And it's going to remove those from there. So as you can see with Copilot, there's a lot of things it can do with conditional formatting. It can't do the terribly advanced stuff, but it can help you with some basic conditional formatting rules, setting up multiple criteria, using data bars, and using color scales as well, and using icons as well. It can do that as well. So there's a lot of things you can do if you're not sure how to set up that conditional formatting. And then you can also go into the conditional formatting rules to see what Copilot's actually done and how it's set that up. One of the coolest features of having Copilot in Excel isn't actually accessible through the Copilot button. Instead, it's this Analyze Data option. If I have a data table selected and I click on Analyze Data, what Copilot's going to do is going to actually analyze data, try to find insights that might be useful, give me suggestions for pivot tables and charts. So if I click on this, it's going to analyze my data quickly and give me a lot of different insights I may want to look at. So here we've got a suggested pivot table that shows me sales by store and salesperson. So if I like this, I can hit the plus button and it'll insert that pivot table into a new sheet. Scroll down and here we've got a chart that shows sales by product. Again, if we like that, insert pivot chart. Here we've got average sales by salesperson. Going across by quantity. Now, some of these insights may not be terribly useful or make a lot of sense in some cases, but it gives you a lot of different ideas as to what you may want to do or how you may want to analyze and slice your data. So it also tells us some insights it finds. For example, the average sales by salesperson is relatively even across the store field. So it gives us a lot of different potential ideas. And there's more results here. So I can click on show all 13 results. It tells me, product C has noticeably higher price. So here it's analyzing products based on their price. So again, I could insert that if I wanted to. Here it's got a really complex chart. We've got price, total sales, average sales by salesperson, and by quantity. So that's a really complex one if we wanted to add that one in. Here we've got a frequency chart by sales. It tells us that price and total sales appear highly correlated. So not terribly insightful, but it's really cool that it's looking at correlations to begin with. So, I mean, that's a potentially interesting opportunity there if it finds other fields that are related to one another. Here it tells us total sales appear highly determined by the average sales by salesperson field. Here we've got another frequency chart by quantity this time. Here it tells us average sales by salesperson is relatively even across the product. Another frequency chart as well. Here, this one by average sales by salesperson. So if I scroll up to the top, though, I can actually ask it a question. So here, I click on here, it'll have suggested questions I may want to ask. I want to look at the distribution of salesperson by product, how many different store items there are, and potentially some charts that I want to create where we've got total price of rep C over a certain date. I could ask it more specific items such as what were the top 3 best-selling products. And so it tells us product C, product E, product G. So we've got their total sales. So top 3 product by total sales. So it correctly figured out what I wanted to do there, and it created or set up a pivot table that I could potentially insert into my spreadsheet. It has also suggestions here. So maybe I want to look at top 3 in product by average of total sales. So we've got average of total sales. So another interesting insight. Here we're just looking at total sales, but here we're looking at the average. So again, giving us ideas as to how we may want to visualize our data. Down here, we've got top 5 in product by total sales. So here we had top 3, but here it's suggesting, okay, maybe we wanted to look at top 5. Again, so a lot of different insights and ideas, ways to potentially give you ideas as to how you may want to analyze your data if you're not really sure. Let's say, which months had the highest sales? Let's ask another question. So here it tells us the month that we have the highest sales. So we look at the date by total sales. We've got other options here. Top year and month of date by average salesperson. Here we've got, again, average total sales. So a lot of different splits that give you ideas as to how you may want to look at your data. Here we've got the top 5 in year and month of date by total sales. So the top months in terms of sales. So it gives us a bit more data in there. So by playing around with this, by asking it different sorts of questions, you can potentially get a lot of valuable insights into your data, and it gives you ideas as to how you may want to report on it, or what charts to create, what pivot tables to create. And if you do like it, you do say, okay, I want to add one of these items in here. I can click on this insert button, and it's going to create a new sheet for me with that pivot table. And now I can adjust it just like I would a normal pivot table. So I've got my table summary in here, and it's got, and so now I've got it created here just as a regular table. So it's got that broken down. So in this case, it's not set up as a pivot table. This is just a regular table. But if I wanted to add that visual in there, I can do that in here. So in this case, it tells us these are just inserts. So this is different from the pivot tables that we had in our other insights. If I actually wanted to create a pivot table, this one here tells me it is a pivot table. If I open that one up, now I actually do have a pivot table that I can manipulate and adjust. So if it says specifically that it's a pivot table, then it'll add it as a pivot table. But if it doesn't, then it's just a regular table showing a summary. But through this analyze data feature, you can go through some of the initial insights it generates for you, or you can actually dig deeper and ask it specific questions to find more detailed responses that you're looking for. But the analyze data feature is definitely an underrated one in Copilot that you may not realize that adds a bit more functionality than just going through Copilot and asking it certain questions, because through the analyze data, it's basically doing a whole bunch of different things for you at once. Whereas Copilot, if you go through the Copilot pane here and just do one by one, it's going to be a lot more cumbersome, more time consuming. Whereas the analyze data feature, the big advantage is it gives you a lot of different insights all at once, and you can sort of start to pick and choose what you want to add, or give you ideas as to what you may want to ask. So a really cool feature to check out is definitely the analyze data option. If you've ever needed to create a macro in Excel, it's easier than ever with the help of Copilot. Even if you have limited to no VBA experience or coding experience, it's possible to do so. I'm going to show you how. So in this table, I've got sales data, and let's say I want to highlight all the rows where the sales in column G are at least $500. So as long as I've got my data selected, I can click on the Copilot button here, and I'm going to ask it to create a macro which highlights every row when the value in column G is at least $500. And I'm going to specify it should highlight every cell in the row yellow when this condition is met. So the key thing is we want to give it enough detail so that Copilot knows precisely what we want to do. So in this case, I'm setting the criteria for column G is at least $500. And if the condition is met, then highlight every cell in the row yellow. So I hit the play button or the run button, and now it's going to go through my request, and now it's going to formulate a macro that I can use in Visual Basic to execute my request. And this is a lot easier than using Excel's built-in macro recorder, which is going to record every step that you take, even unnecessary ones. It's not going to be as efficient, and it's not going to be able to handle situations like loops or if statements. With Copilot, it's possible to do that. So here it's created a macro for me. So what it's going to do is it's going to give me a description of what it's doing. So it says to create a macro that highlights every row in yellow where the value in column G is at least 500, you can use the following VBA code. Remember, you will need a macro-enabled workbook to run this code. So it's setting up my variables. It's telling telling me what they are, and putting in comments as well. So it's assuming my data starts at row 2 and goes to row 1000, adjusts the range accordingly, clears any conditional formatting, and now it loops through each cell to say, okay, if it's greater than or equal to 500, now highlight the entire row. So it's setting the cell's interior row color to be yellow, and then cycling through. And now it tells me how I can use this macro. It says to use this macro for all these steps. Alt F11, open the VBA editor, insert a module, paste the code, close the editor, and then run the macro by hitting Alt F8 and selecting the macro to run. It says make sure to adjust the sheet name and the range according to your actual data. This macro will highlight the entire row in yellow for each cell in column G that has a value of at least 500. So it tells me what it's going to do, and it gives me the code and instructions on how to add that code into Visual Basic. So I'm going to grab this code from the end sub all the way to the very beginning at the start, the sub. So I'm going to hit Control C to copy it. And I'm going to open up Visual Basic. And I've got it over here. So I'm going to insert a module, just like it told me, paste it in there, and it's done. So I pasted the code in there. Now what I can do is now I need to save this as a macro enabled file before I can actually run the macro. So I've saved the file now, and now what I can do is try to execute that code. So now if I do as it says, go to Alt F8, we've got my macro there, and now I'm going to run it. So it should highlight every row where the sales value is at least $500 in column G. So I'm going to hit run, and just like that, it's done the job. So it's run the macro and exactly done what I wanted. So every value of at least $500 or more, it's highlighted the entire row, every cell in the row. So it's followed the instructions, it's created a loop, and it's told me how I can adjust it or how I can insert it into my macros. So it's a really useful tool for creating macros. And, if there's something off or you want to adjust something, you can tell Copilot that you want to adjust it, or you want to do a slightly different code in there. And so it's a really useful tool for creating macros. And even if you have limited experience, you can set that up to make sure that it's working how you want it to work. Because with the built-in macro recorder, you're quite limited in what it can do, just because it's going to record every single step. It's not going to be able to do loops. It's not going to be able to do if statements. So with Copilot, it makes that process a whole lot easier. You don't have to go through looking through code or anything like that. You can easily just tell Excel exactly what you want to do, and it's going to create that code for you and walk you through the process of how to add it into your workbook. That wraps up 10 things Excel's Copilot can do for you today. If you like this video, please make sure to leave a like and be sure to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.